Welcome everybody. June 13th, we made it through another school year. Hooray. We are now in summer mode and some of you are still coming to our board meetings. So that's exciting that we have some summer participation. So thanks for joining us tonight. And looks like we've got about 23 with us here online. I know we've got a few at school, Patrice and Kathy and Kevin up at school as well. So we're getting this hybrid thing figured out for sure. So, all righty, I'm going to do a quick rundown of our agenda. And we have a full agenda tonight. So we will call this thing to order here at 6:36. And as far as the agenda, I do want to make note that this is officially what we would consider our annual meeting. So we did want to make note of that in the agenda and in the minutes. So based on that, we will be adding a vote for our officers for the upcoming year. So we wanted to do that at the annual meeting. So along with the other many votes that we're looking at, we will have upfront time for public comment. I did want to make mention that in our guidelines for public comment, we do have an option to consider public comment at other periods, such as before a vote. So I just wanted to remind us of that option that we have. That's not obviously a requirement. But that is something we may choose to do at any point. You'll notice in the agenda, I definitely put clear points of discussion before we vote. I know we have a number of votes to review tonight, so I want us to make sure that we have plenty of time to walk through a discussion. If we do need to make any decision about opening up, we can do that at that time. Obviously, that's only an option for us. We do not have to do that, but wanted to make sure everybody saw that we do have those periods built in for discussion amongst us here, administration and board, before those votes. I do want to, at some point, I know we're going to talk committees, so I do want to just circle up about tomorrow's plans when we get to that point and just be clear about the agenda for tomorrow's working session and what we want to do there. Also, there was a question about public comment for that, so I want to clarify that tonight. And I don't know if we should actually do that now to clarify that point, but whether or not public comment would need to be taken or at the working sessions that we hold or the committee meeting. So if we could just quickly clarify that, that may inform whether people want to comment tonight or not.
Patrice is going to address that specifically, if I'm not mistaken. That was part of your discussion with Sean, right, Patrice?
For the committees, I have that information. I'm looking at Kevin for the working session. My understanding is working sessions are no public comment unless there's action going to be taken.
Yeah.
Right. No action is taken at working sessions kind of by definition. That's how we designate them as working sessions, is that we won't be taking action. So anytime there's a proposition before the board, the public has the right to comment on that proposition at some point. That can be at the same meeting that the action is taken or a meeting before the action is taken at some point. So there is no requirement that public comment be taken at any particular moment. And there is no requirement that there's ever like a free-for-all public comment. No, we allow that because we like it. But if there's any kind of free-for-all type public comment that you'd like to make, this would be the best time to do it because there's no guarantee that it would be taken at committee meetings or working sessions.
So we could choose to do that if we so chose at that time. Yes. Okay. Got it. Thank you. I appreciate that. And that may help others to determine what to do for their public comments. So appreciate that. So as far as votes, we do have a couple of minutes sets to approve. So we'll run through those first and do want to get in the vote since this is the annual meeting for our officers for the year. And I'll be bringing our conflict of interest forms tomorrow for us all to sign. So I have those printed. So I figured that's a good thing to just quickly cover off this month in June before we get into the school year. So we'll kind of cover off on those logistical votes up front. Then we'll go into Patrice's report with Kathy and Jared chiming in. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4 discussions and votes that have been noted for that. We start off with our updated public records policy. Then we move on to parent representatives. We're also talking about the SRO services provided by Ocoee Police Department. And I know we're also talking about bond investment language that's been provided by Arnold Law Firm. So with regards to those votes, that's what we're looking at there. 4 in a row. Then we'll take a moment, and I figure at that point we might turn it over to Philip for a little bit in moving into the budget discussion, since that's one of our key topics for tonight. Touching on the budget, any discussion needed there. Again, discussion and vote. The plan is to, I do believe, vote and approve that budget tonight. I know I saw some files flying earlier, so I'm sure we'll review those in more detail. And then if I do see PTO Owls on the line, so if Sarah's with us, she can share some thoughts on PTO, anything committees wise, but then also knowing that we have our working session tomorrow. So maybe at that point we want to kind of start to wrap up and plan to check in for tomorrow's meeting. Sound okay?
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Okay, let's do it. So first up is a period for public comment. So again, for public comment, you have a chance to comment for up to 3 minutes. And at this point, I'll open up my chat window and just wait to see if anyone's out there that would like to comment. Please go ahead and add your name in the chat, and we'll do it that way. A question is okay. We may not immediately answer it, but we'll take it.
Does that mean I can ask it?
Sure, Kim, go ahead.
Okay. All right, thanks. I was just wondering, when the principals do their update, is there going to be a portion kind of explaining this switch to all advanced courses that's planned for the middle/adolescent program, and like how that could impact our MTSS kids, or would that be a different meeting?
Probably an email to Jared.
Yeah, that's an email to Jared.
Okay, so we're not nothing's going to be sent out like school wide. That's just like a
So
one-on-one?
Kim, I don't mind speaking unless Kristen or Stacy wants to address this. So for board meetings, public comments are never like a back and forth with the board and administration and public. So it's always a little awkward. But if you have specific questions for curriculum or anything to do with the operations at the school, go ahead and email the principal.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that I definitely understand. I was just wondering, like, when you guys do your presentation, is that part of it? That was my question, but it sounds like it's not, so that's fine. That was my only question, because I was kind of hanging around to listen to that with the interest of that, so I just wanted to know. That's all.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Kim.
Yeah, happy to add clarification on any of the agenda items.
No, you can just talk. So Patrick's going to just talk, and you should be able to hear him from my computer.
Okay. Cool. So I saw the agenda and I was just curious, I know you'll be discussing it later, but I was curious how the public knows about stuff before you vote on it, in regards to those ones about like public record policy, parent representatives, and all those kinds of things. Like, and it sounded like, Kevin, you're saying that we don't necessarily know that before you vote on it. Like our public comment might actually be at the end of it, or like.
No, not to cut you off, but
No.
your opportunity to provide public comment will always be before the action is taken.
Okay.
It has to be.
Okay, so I just wanted to understand it. So thank you for the back and forth on this one, because I know you don't normally do that. So so later on, there could be a discussion between the board, the stuff is presented, and you could you have the option to, or you are required to open it back up to public before the vote. That's why I just wanted to understand that, like, rules of the road.
Not required to open it back up.
Okay.
So what chapter 286 says is that when there is a proposition before the board,
So
the
like
public
a
must
vote.
be given the opportunity to comment, to be heard prior to the action being taken.
Okay.
And people who have interpreted that have pretty clearly said that it doesn't even have to be at the same meeting. That said, you need to know about the existence of a proposition. So, reviewing the agenda and at, right now or prior to the meeting, you'll see that it's before the board. What a proposition is not exactly sure. So our interpretation is that the public's always allowed to talk at the beginning of every meeting. And if you see something on the agenda, you can speak to it. I think we've always done it at the beginning for that reason.
Yeah, I just noticed it in the bylaws that it says before and like before a vote, so I just wanted to understand that. So, because it's like hard to say if you have public comment on something, if you're gonna vote on it later, that public doesn't even know what it is. So that's really what I was trying to understand and get those kind of. How do I view it?
And I think you'll see that, again, I'm engaging in a conversation. Right?
No, I know.
I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it, I just don't know what it is, so I'm curious how I could comment on those.
I think that.
Well, and the board is first looking at it, really, to be honest, right? We've not had any discussion on any of these items until we meet. So we're not gonna, so you're not seeing anything that's not happened anywhere else, right? Our discussion will take place that night to then determine. So we don't have any preemptive except for what would have been attached to board docs, just like public.
So, and that's kind of my point, like, the public is supposed to speak on something, then you are unveiling it, and then you vote on it, and then the public can't say anything until after you voted on the next meeting.
And I think you'll see on the agenda that we're actually trying to do something new where there is some additional discussion opportunity, probably at the discretion of the chair, but the agenda is done a little bit differently this time to provide for that. So
Okay,
trying to be responsive to that concern.
cool. Good. That was really all I was wanting to ask and understand, so, cool, thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else?
I think that's good wait time, Kristen.
Okay, we'll call that period done. All right, so we're gonna move on to, we have two sets of minutes to approve. We had the May 2nd board meeting. So we'll start with that one and then we'll go on to the May 31st one, but let's start with May 2nd. Hopefully you all have access to those in board docs and have reviewed those. So any questions, edits, comments about the May 2nd meeting minutes?
Nope, they look good to me.
Yeah, I didn't see anything to add or change. Anyone else?
Okay, anybody else?
I'd
Have a
make a
motion.
motion that we approve the May 2nd board meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries to approve the meeting topic from minutes from May.
Thank you all, appreciate that. And on to the next, May 31st, we had a special topic board meeting. So hopefully you took a look at those as well. Any questions on those?
Have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the special topic meeting minutes.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any? My brain just can't, like, literally lost the word. Not opposed. Thank you, Kristen. Wow, I literally just said it. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. It's not even late.
Yeah, we're starting early tonight, Stacey.
I know, I don't know what's wrong. Like, normally I don't get to like this until after.
Getting ready. Okay,
Oh, okay.
all right.
Okay. I know, it's on multitasking.
All right, thank you. We've got those minutes approved. What we'd like to do now is make sure that, since this is our annual meeting, we'll be voting on our officers for the 2023-24 school year. So I will read them off as I see them and we can discuss or clarify as needed, but I do believe we have Stacy Williams as our president. And we have Brett Casey as our vice president. We have myself as secretary, and we have Philip Galena as treasurer. Any discussion about that?
Nope, Stacy's doing a fantastic job.
Oh,
Going.
Would
Okay,
you like me to make a motion as a
Go for it.
non-officer?
make a motion.
So I'll make a motion to approve the officers as stated for the next term period, I guess.
Which is the 2023-24 school year. Yep, yep.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Welcome to another term, everybody.
Woo!
Congratulations.
Okay, here we go. Very good. All right.
You've stuck with us for a year at least, Heather.
Yeah, a little clap. Somebody's clapping. That's exciting. I see a clap. Okay. Thanks, y'all, seriously, for your service. We work hard as a team. Thanks for all you do. So appreciate
Great team.
Y'all do a lot for sure.
The A team,
it.
telling you.
Okay. So we are on to principal's report. So over to you, Patrice.
Okay, so the first part is just talking about the construction update. We do have more information to share today. So fortunately, yay, Fuller's Cross is fully open again. There is some additional work that they have to finish up at their curbs, but by the county, they had to open up today. So they did get it open today, so that's all good news. We did discover a little bit of a, not sure who thought this was a good idea around the soccer field. So the soccer field, when we were getting ready to set up the goals for the soccer field, there is a pretty precipitous drop off right at where the one goal is supposed to be on the, oh my goodness, I'm so bad at directions right now when I'm thinking
South
about
side.
this. Say that again?
The south side?
The south side, right near where the drainage pond is. And so what we, fortunately, Justin was on site today from Building Hope. And so what we are proposing is that they extend the field on the north side, maybe about 18 feet or so, which will mean extending the sod, possibly adding a little, another line of irrigation. We're not sure yet, so that we can feel like we have a safe goal line for the south end. So that is one thing that just came up today, and we will get more information by Thursday about getting the sod. As you may remember, the sod was kind of difficult to get a hold of. So we're hoping that since it is summer, it's not going to be as difficult as it was in the spring, and everything will be able to continue to go on. The other items that will be finished will be then the fencing at the front gate off Fuller's Cross needs to still be finished, as well as some other things, including the field markings. If anybody is aware of somebody who professionally will mark up a soccer field, please let us know. The general contractor has, I think they're up to about 17 people they have already asked, and are not finding anyone willing to take the job.
Dave Fishpool is about to be hired.
Really? Come on, Dave, you got this.
I
I
had to
know.
reach out to the Winter Garden Soccer League too, Brett, but no takers on that one either.
I know.
Did you really?
Yeah.
We
That
reached
seems
out
strange.
to the Winter Garden Recreation, I think I also reached out to Ocoee Recreation, trying to find somebody. Yeah,
And it's
So-
just to come paint the lines?
yeah. So we
They do
also
that.
have somebody on staff that is more than willing to upkeep the lines, but doesn't want to be responsible for the one who needs to do the actual marking. And I can understand that. So that's it for that. Anybody have any questions about the construction right now?
And we're still waiting on to find out if we're going to be able to notch that drainage out there on the back behind Tesla.
Yes, so
correct?
that still also needs to happen, and hopefully we'll get another update on Thursday. So now our goal is to close out by the end of the month. But now with this latest news, I'm wondering if it's going to be the middle of July, but we will see.
You know,
And-
you can't leave until this is done, right?
Yeah, well, and by the way, we all forgot one thing, to introduce Heather Clay. So
Yeah.
Heather Clay has now joined us. She's our new executive director. We have been having a lot of great time the last 2 days, and she's been getting right involved with some of our budget, conversations we've had today. We called it, I don't want to use the word, but we kind of called it a war room, this afternoon, working through some of this. So she's getting settled quickly, and she got to meet Justin and got to learn a little bit more about the whole project as well.
What a time to
other
come in, right, Heather?
I know. Any other questions about the construction end? I
Did you ever
realize
did you ever get final pricing back or costs on that job? Did we bottom that out?
No, and that won't come. That will hopefully, they have to finish up a few more things along the curb, and they had to do a concrete apron for one of the driveways. And they have to finish up a little bit more work tomorrow. They are also going to be doing the drainage work as well as the other things, but I'm hoping that at least we can get some cost analysis in the next week for what they just completed.
Okay.
I'm going to skip over and just update the portable. Unfortunately, right now, I just don't have a lot to share with you. One of the things I believe I shared on email was that one of the problems that the vendor for the portables was having was being able to obtain somebody who would do the site work as well as the putting it on the permits and getting all the permitting in. So we did reach out to Z Development, who's done our work on our site work. And so they have agreed, but Z Development is also still waiting for the city to get back to them about the requirements for the fire lane. So we're still like in limbo, but Kathy is pushing forward, and we always had the plan B that we are, most likely going to start those classrooms in the MPR. So we're still all go with all of this while we wait to work out some of these issues with the portables.
And good to note that that's been communicated to anyone who's been given a spot in primary, that's most likely going to be the starting place. And happily, everyone says they don't care where they are, just so long as they have a spot in the school. So.
Okay.
Wait, can I ask, where do we settle on the lease?
So again, the other piece, sorry to that, was that we are still waiting for legal update. So yeah, sorry. So legal counsel, Arnold Law Firm, gave us some input around the contract. They see the same portable contract. They've seen it before. They, were concerned about a few things that they felt like it leads a little bit too heavy in their favor. So we've put out some requests, and we're waiting to hear back from their legal department. So it went to our legal, to their legal department, and we're waiting to hear back from them. Anything else? Okay. So next thing, I just wanted to kind of give you an update on some of the information that Sean gave us around committees. And you know, what I explained to him, how we've had a long history of using board committees as a mechanism for the board, and it's been very successful. You know, while at the same time during the pandemic years, outside of the finance committee, a lot of the other committees, you know, kind of went into hibernation. And we are trying to get those committees, you know, up and running. Just want to call out one of the things that he just said, you know, that we definitely are guided by our bylaws, where it talks about that the board shall appoint a chair for each of these committees, determine the scope of such committees, and that scope could be amended at any time. Committee member terms may be established upon appointment and shall be 1 year or less. And I don't want to just read this straight, but this is what is in our bylaws, what I've provided for you. We don't have to have board members as committee chairs. So that is one thing that he did share with us, because that was a question that Stacy asked me to pose. So that was
In the committee at all,
say that again.
or in the committee, or on the committee at all. We can have a committee completely made up, not of board members at all.
Correct. Correct. And the board, under the scope of the committee, can determine the number of committee members and how selection of the committee members is going to occur. While all the committees do not have to follow the Sunshine Law, Sean suggested the easy process for running committee meetings is to address the meetings under, or what we call in the sunshine. So such things that we would have to say the committees would need 3 pieces to have in place. They always have to provide notice, they have to provide minutes, and a process for public comment only when action will be taken as part of the board's delegation to the committee. Zoom meetings do not require public access at the school as a typical governance meeting that you have, meaning your normal board meeting.
So does that mean some committees are exempt from the sunshine law and some aren't? Like, because it says, well, all committees do not have to follow. Is that all committees don't have to follow that, or just certain committees?
So the way that he, you know, termed it is, and the way that I understand it, if you have a committee, for instance, if you say, since Patrick Cleary's here, I'm going to just throw Patrick a bone. So if the board and not the school administration said, hey, we want to have a beautification committee, and we want you to take some action to do something to beautify, you know, the yard, lawn, work with administration, with a budget, etc. That does not, and I'm looking for Kevin to just confirm, that does not require any board action. Now, normally, a lot of those kind of committees would actually just kind of run through the school anyway. But Brett, does that help you? That would be kind of an example of when you're not really taking, you're not having board delegation, or you're not taking action for the board.
Okay, so we'll just so to your point, I think Sean's saying anything that delegates action for the board, we should follow under the sunshine.
Correct.
Okay.
It's a little, you know, it might be a little broader than that. You know, if the committee has a function of advising the board in a way that they're screening out information and presenting the board with a recommendation, then that is a sunshine committee, because the board's not going to see all the same information that the committee saw. So an example of that would be a committee, I'm just making this up, I don't know anything about schools, but a committee that looks at curriculum options and then looks at them all, ranks them, scores them, and then makes a recommendation to the board. And the board just sees on its agenda, you know, for ratification, more or less, a proposal to adopt such and such curriculum, right? That would be a sunshine committee. Another thing we have to keep in mind is that if you want to have 2 board members serving on one of these committees, you're going to have to notice it anyway. So I think that in many circumstances, we will treat committee meetings as sunshine committees. The finance committee is a good example of one that's almost always making recommendations to the board and would be treated as a sunshine committee. On the other hand, you can't go forever and ever down that rabbit hole. I mean, any group of 3 people deciding which patch of sod to replace first, you know, if you take it too literally, is it a board decision on which patch of sod to replace by the soccer field? I don't know. I mean, ultimately the board directs the people who make that call, but we're not gonna have, 2 maintenance people and an assistant principal being considered a sunshine committee. So I think we will generally be erring on the side of these being sunshine committees unless it's obviously not. A group that's serving a purely fact-finding function, gathering information, that's not subject to sunshine law. But again, if we're gonna have more than one board member there, we'll probably notice it anyway,
Mhm.
because why not? I mean, we're not really doing a lot. We're not doing anything really in the dark here, except as it relates to confidential information, student records and those kinds of things. So I think.
I think the one
we'll see
example
most
I
of these
was,
things being used.
the one thing I was thinking of is like in the past, we've had to deal with some HR type issues where, having those discussions in public can be awkward. So but again, I think we had more than one board member present. So we've always treated those like public meetings, but I just didn't know if there was any distinction there.
And there's really not, the fact that you're discussing something sensitive is generally not an exception from the sunshine law. There are limited exceptions for pending litigation. There's limited exceptions for union negotiations. There's limited exceptions for sort of trade secret presentations where somebody's proposing a public-private partnership, but those are specifically spelled out in the statutes, and there is no, general exception for personnel decisions. If you're interviewing people to be the executive director in a public meeting, you don't invite the others to exit the room. When you're interviewing the one, the others stay in the room if they want to. Most people don't, but that's how that goes. So, I think, except in those circumstances where there is no final decision making or screening and advisory role for a board, it's going to be a sunshine meeting.
I had
And,
a question.
oh, go ahead, Marissa.
Is that right? I had a question on committee members. Like, how formal, is there any kind of best practices or outline for them? Like if a parent wants to join, like I'm just thinking about my committee I'm starting up, like do I need to, does that mean like those who casually stop in can't participate or talk, or I guess, is there any additional like information on committee members and what they're allowed to do and those who just want to listen into a committee meeting, that type of thing?
So no, and that's good, great question, because that's kind of what I was talking to him about too. And the way that he explained it is that, for instance, those kinds of decisions, the board can kind of, first off, in thinking about, do you want to have guidelines for choosing committee members? Because you can have a big committee. I mean, well, you can have attendance at committee, but in the end, there are just a specific number of committee members. And so the board can make a determination. Do they want to have 5 committee members? Do they want to have 6 committee members? The board can make that determination. They can also make a determination. How do they choose committee members? I would think most of the time, I think when we've done this, for instance, and I'm mostly thinking about the finance, but I'm also thinking about a few other committee members, we've looked for people or requested people who have an expertise in that area. So, that's something that the board could say, is that, they'll be looking for people who have an expertise or an interest in that area. But that's all up to the board, what you want to do and how you want to craft how committee members are chosen.
I think it's important to identify the people who are on each committee, especially if they're sunshine committees, so they know that they're on a sunshine committee. It's if you don't think you're subject to it because you don't think you're on the committee, that's a big problem.
Right.
And, we've got to be taking minutes at committee meetings, which are supposed to be approved by that same committee at a future date. So who gets a vote? I don't think we're going to be restrictive at all about committee membership within reason. I mean, just as long as the numbers work, but we do want to know who those people are so we know who's voting on things and who's not allowed to be talking to each other outside these committee meetings. I mean, if you want to talk about finance matters, then you and your buddy shouldn't join the committee together, right? So I suggested that to the staff, that we do document somehow what our committees are and what the memberships are. I also note that our bylaws do call for, what is it, a nominating committee and a governance committee?
They had a nominating committee, a finance committee, and There was,
And then there's a variety of charters that were adopted by the board for some various committees a few years ago, some of which seem to still exist and some of which don't. So my recommendation to the staff was that we go ahead and renew those, you know, just re-up the ones we want to keep having and not re-up the ones we don't.
Let me ask you a question, Kevin, with what you referenced. So if you define the finance committee as a sunshine committee, does that mean then that I would not be able to talk finance matters with, say, Jeremy Bellis because he's on the finance committee? Or does it stay with where, is it still separate, right? He's not a board member. He's just a committee member.
The committee is a sunshine board. So you can share information with each other. You can arrange to have meetings with each other, but the actual discussion of the things that you're acting on will be taking place in the public. And you would not have those conversations outside the sunshine meeting. That doesn't mean you can't share information. Like when you're sending out spreadsheets and proposed budgets and the kinds of things that end up in our agendas, obviously they end up in our agendas. We see them ahead of time. There's nothing wrong with that. You can share that. What we cannot do is discuss it with you. And each of these committees is a separate sunshine body in and of itself. So you're on a board, which is a sunshine body. You're also on a finance committee, which is a sunshine body.
Now, I'm hearing Patrice say this is a suggestion from Sean, not a requirement. The sunshine law, I mean, I've always felt, quite frankly, makes it very hard to do business as a board. I understand the benefits that come from it as a broader aspect of our state and all, but I find it harder. Like I'm like, ooh, like it seems like it would be something that would be harder if we set up all our committees, like whether it's our fundraising committees, even our if we were to put up the gala committee, moving that stuff forward, we enhance it. If we lean into that and then go with more restrictions of public comments, more restrictions of that, it seems like while it might be nice from a checking the boxes on the legal side, it seems like it increases the complexity of just making things move forward.
It doesn't matter what you call your committee or how you want to designate your committee.
Right.
What matters is what it does.
exactly.
And so, you know, violating the sunshine law is a thing that can make you subject to civil penalties if you're not aware of what you've done wrong. And if you are aware of what you've done wrong, it can subject you to criminal penalties. So we don't want to mess around with that.
So, and I just want to clarify too, one thing, when I said that Sean said it was what he was saying, the only thing that he was saying was optional is whether or not what we discussed earlier, whether or not a meeting is just fact finding or it has some other purpose and it's not something that the board's going to take action on. You know, there are some charters that look at those committees differently and they don't necessarily have to follow all the sunshine rules. But he said, when you think of the fact that you really only have 3 things that a committee has to do, it has to have the minutes, it has to have reporting, you know, the report for notice, thank you, notice, it has to have minutes notice, and then a process for public comment, but only when action is going to be taken, you know, at that. There's a lot of finance meetings, as you know, Philip, where we're not really taking any action. I mean, really, most of our actions have more to do with when we get to the board, but the finance committee is the one that is always called out that it is under the sunshine law.
Well, and that kind of goes back to like Marissa's original point. I'd just like to like kind of round that back out, is that she was asking about the communication piece. And you know, like we, in that, one of those 3 is offering a time for a public comment. So the committee members are the ones that are having the discussion. And then if you want to, within your time frame of your committee discussion, offer a space for public comment in there, right? Like at a different time based on what you're talking about, then you can do that. But the discussion is still going to be for the committee members. It's not just an open discussion for all public. Was that one of your questions originally, Marissa? Because you have just people like showing up to the meetings, right? Like once we set those committee members, then that's the group that's having the discussion, and then you'll have maybe 1 or 2 spots in there for public comment, depending on how you set your agenda.
Right. Yeah, that came up whenever I was having my first meeting of like what that means to be a committee member and what are the requirements and all that.
Just to be clear, public comment is not one of the 3 prongs of the Sunshine Law. It's being open and accessible to the public. So if the public can call in and hear what we're doing, then you're complying with Sunshine Law.
Okay.
The deal about public comment is a little bit separate and apart. It's in a different part of the same chapter of the statute, but it's not part of the constitutional sunshine rights. It just says that the public shall have an opportunity to be heard on propositions before the board. I don't want to overthink that, though. I think when we're talking about a gala committee, we want everybody to come and share their opinions. When we're at the finance committee, if somebody has questions, pipe up. These are not formal environments. We're going to comply with Sunshine Law by having a sign on the door telling you where to go and having the door unlocked. As far as input goes, we want to hear from whoever has something, constructive to say. So.
So yeah, this is helpful because I am now clearer about the need to designate the members. So this implicates to how we facilitate meetings, right? And
Right.
so this is in my mind about, for example, the communication meeting committee and how that is one of these sort of forming committees that we're just now getting going, and Marissa, yours as well with the fundraising. This is great discussion to have now because we want to be clear about who is a member. That was not clear to me. So I am clearer now that I understand there is a need to designate members, and then there's general public who come, and we can decide how we want to engage with the public throughout that meeting, but we do have some, what I would call core members.
Right.
Designated accordingly. So
because like Kevin said, you would vote on your minutes from the previous meeting. You would manage it, like anybody would manage a meeting, as long as everybody stays on topic, there may be some opportunity for, back and forth, but when there is something that you're trying to move forward, it's those committee members that would be voting on whatever it is that you're going to vote on.
okay, so I'm going to get clear again then. So we're saying that as a committee, so what I have been doing was asking our committees to take notes, take those minutes, and then directly posting those. But are we saying that committees now need to vote on approve their minutes before those are posted, as we do here in board meetings?
That's what I'm going to look at, Kevin.
It's best practice. I mean, what the Sunshine Law says is that minutes shall be taken. But it's always good if the committee takes a look and makes sure that they're accurately recorded, because what's being written down is just one person's notes. So
Sure.
And
And
I've participated in my own committee meetings over the past year where I was the only person, I think, that was on the committee that was sitting with the trees. So we noticed it as a meeting in case anybody wanted to come. But in particular, I'm thinking of meetings where we were just, making a list of which policies go in which binder, so they weren't really groundbreaking stuff. But even those, there's a minutes that there is no one to approve it, but you do it anyway.
I'm wondering if that can be kind of just a recap of the meeting prior to adjourning the meeting. And then that way they could be posted pretty soon after. I know that's not how we typically do the board meeting minutes, but for committees, that I'm wondering if that's something that we could implement just as a common practice for concluding the committee meetings. Just let's recap the minutes, make sure that this has been captured correctly, and then approve that before the meeting adjourns.
I love that, because part of this is about, making sure that there's visibility to what's happening in these committee meetings. And if we have to wait until an unknown date, because the committees may not meet as regularly as, say, our more clockwork like monthly board meetings where we know that we review, vote, and all of that, then that gives a chance to get closure at the end of that meeting. So it can go up and we can be done and move to the next.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking even you could post it as draft and then take the draft off after you've approved it in the next committee meeting. Also allows for an easier format for people to get it, because they could get it off of board docs even if they are a committee member. Where it, unlikely that we're going to make revisions to what we have posted. I think most of our committee members or committee meeting minutes are relatively light on the details, with something being in there. I did want to clarify, and it's kind of the same stuff Marissa's asking. I'm interested in conversation in those minutes, even from people who aren't a member of the committee. I don't want to shut them down from being able to chime in to ask questions, to be involved in some of the conversation. They can be redirected. Those meetings are small. They're intentionally small. They're intended to be a spot where the non-members have an opportunity to essentially feel out becoming more official members. Whether that's a fundraising one, whether that's finance committee, whether it's communication one. I hear that we're required to have a time frame. If we're making a decision, we're required to have an opportunity for public comment, but that is not excluding us from allowing public conversation to happen in the meeting. And if the people who are attending are not being problematic, are not trying to commandeer the meeting, or basically being disruptive, then it seems to me like we'd be going in a bit of the wrong direction for building more relationships with our community members, by trying to add more structure and restrictions on when they can be involved in the conversation. That's part of what I hear in this that leaves me a little bit. I'm like, I don't know, I haven't had problems in the years I've been doing finance committee with public wanting to show up and completely redirect us in whole different directions, or with any of the other committees that I've been on through the time. So I just want to make sure that am I restricted? Do I have to tell them, I'm sorry, no questions, no interaction, nothing's happening, we're outside a public comment moment? Or are we able to interact and to field their questions and hear their comments and their ideas, and still move the meeting, still keep an eye on the clock, and make sure that we're advancing the agenda. But
I think we're just trying to have a consistent, standard, structured way of doing this so that we're not all over the place. And I think just looking for the statutory requirements that we're supposed to follow. So I don't think there's any intention to eliminate people's participation or voices to be heard. It's just to make sure that we've got, if we're not following standards or procedures where we're supposed to be, that we're doing that, and that we're being consistent, I think, across all of them, because I don't think we really are today, or we need to tighten that up at least. So I don't know I don't think anybody else has a different opinion on that. If you do, but
Might be worthwhile then just to determine, are we just having a discussion? Are we going to put some teeth behind this, and maybe we just a cover sheet with a checklist for a committee protocol that gets submitted with the minute discussion, so that when you're running a committee meeting, you have your 6 things that are your general guidelines, and that's your cover sheet. Check them off, submit them with your meetings for approval, post it on board docs, and then it's consistent across the board, I guess, versus.
good idea.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a great suggestion, AJ, because I think that we want to give a little bit of a latitude to the facilitators of these committee meetings to run a meeting that's going to be productive, yet also follow the protocol about, we are clear about who the members are, and we're clear about when we're engaging beyond those members. And we do that intentionally. And we manage the meeting, and we manage the minutes, and we manage the time. So I like that idea.
I have one other thing that potentially could be on the checklist, I guess, because I personally I'm not clear on, is at what point is what the committee is recommending or wanting to move forward be something for the administration to gain approval, or for the board to gain approval? And like, what is that threshold?
I think usually if you reach out to administration, in my case, since it's my last board meeting, you reach out to Heather Clay, and she can, provide you feedback. Marissa, I think that
Okay.
we'd be able to provide you pretty quick feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can also bring questions during our committee updates times, during our board meeting. As the committee chair, you could bring back that update and even put it as a question to the board. This is some of the stuff we were touching on. Here's the update. For myself, one of the things I take is if it's anything that makes me go, oh, let me really think about that, that's definitely something I want to push back to the board. So there's more, if it's not readily apparent which one is the obvious option, then that's definitely something you want to feel out the board a bit more on. You can, like I said, bring it back into that update as well. So get that feedback and get more of a feel for what's going on. Though you're not surprising the board with anything that you have going on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So we can maybe even just take a few minutes tomorrow too, to just look at what things we want on that checklist, and you know, maybe even look at Kathy and Jared too, and Heather on what they want per se for committee scope, right? Like on stuff like that too, and what are some of the things we want to look at to kind of just make it a little bit more uniform, right? And easier to follow and be consistent. So we can have a brief maybe hiatus around that discussion tomorrow.
It fits with the communication topic, so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good.
Sounds good. All right, Patrice.
Okay, so I know further on. So let's go back. I also provided you an update to a public records request policy that Arnold Law Firm offered me, and I liked it. I sent it to you guys for your feedback and possible vote for today.
This is the standard one that they're using for a majority of a lot of the charter schools around the state too. So
yes, and this is the one. I mean, typically this is. I don't think there really is anything new. I'm trying to remember if there was anything new in here, because this is the one that the school has been following, mostly just because whenever we get a public record request, normally if we haven't already heard from the Arnold Law Firm, because they will typically be aware, especially of vendors who are out there making these kinds of requests, and they'll let all the charter schools know this is what's going on and this is what we follow. So there wasn't a lot in here that was new, but I did like the fact that it was all scoped out really well for me.
Yeah, I just think the clarification that the principals are the records custodians. I think if we get that information posted clearly on the website.
And we have it. It's
Yep,
already
the rest
posted.
of this stuff this is where Kevin earns his seat on the board, going through the legal mumbo jumbo here for us, but I think this is what they've given us. It makes sense to me.
Yep, it's the right thing to do, and you know, posting the information about the custodian gives you some additional protections from.
Well, we
sued.
legally have to, yeah. So it's already posted, because that is something we had it. It was a little bit too small, and so when they looked at it, I wasn't Sean, it was Braxton. I think looked at it because we had there's some vendor who's been asking all the charter schools for public record requests. We were in the middle of that this month as well, and so they did, you know, call that out and say, hey, I think you need to make it a little bit bigger where people can find this information. So we changed that on the website.
looks good for me. Any other questions or concerns regarding this?
I just appreciate the update and seeing the details, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
So that we have a consistent process to follow, so.
Do I have a motion on the table?
I'll make a motion to approve the public records request policy as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Public records.
And so then, Kristen, go ahead and do what you do. And I like the fact, one of the things I've liked about their updates on their policies is the board secretary certificate at the end. So that's.
I have to sign, yeah,
I know, you have to sign with the date. So
okay.
you can do that and just send that back to me when you get a moment. Not right now, but you know, when you get a moment. Then not last thing, vote on parent representative, and I provided you all the language of the update for that. The Arnold Law Firm also wanted to point out to us that we really need to, perhaps their suggestion is to change it to the principals, because that's what other charter schools do. Because one of the pieces that they really should be required to attend board meetings. And so our people normally that we've had on as these parent representatives don't necessarily attend board meetings all the time. They do sometimes, but not all the time. So they suggested that we update it for this coming school year to change it to Kathy for the primary through 6th grade and Jared for 7th through 12th grade.
Any conflict of interest with that you could see arising, Patrice?
No, because this is a little bit different than some of the other things that were involved in around parent complaints. We already have a process for that. I'm also proposing a grievance policy for you, which is separate from the Parent Rights Act. So I don't think it is. And I think it just makes sense because of the other element. And again, you know how this goes. A lot of these state statutes are written for large districts, but then the charter schools also have to address them. And so with this other element that representatives are supposed to be attending board meetings, he just said the easiest thing that he has found with his charter schools is to go ahead and have the principals be those parent representatives.
No, the why behind the what there, I think is the important piece as to why this exists and why, you know, how where it came from and what we have to do to meet the needs. So thank you for sharing that.
And is there a specific purpose to the role or something?
They are just in the statute, what I've, gave you is that, we're supposed to appoint a representative to facilitate parental involvement, provide access to information, assist parents and others with questions and concerns, and resolve disputes. Which is, kind of what we already are doing, but it's, again, it's a state statute that you have to name that person. We've named them before, but he said that in digging in a little bit more, he said one of the updates to this legislation or statute at some point was that they need to attend board meetings.
And so I guess if I'm like hearing all of the reasoning, right, is like, it's not like sustainable for these other individuals to attend every board meeting and then also be able to like answer parent questions and perform the duties. Is that, am I tracking?
Yeah, and the reason why we, we had, been using our, people at the front desk is because they are oftentimes still going to act as that liaison a lot of times with answering questions. But this is a more formal person that would be addressing more formal concerns because they're still going to be doing the job that they're doing just by answering the phones and being at the front desk.
I feel too like if something is coming down that is, severe and really needs attention, like you want the principals handling that.
Right.
Anyways, that's where it needs to go.
I didn't realize that the individuals, Hilda, they were employees. I got wrapped up in the name parent representative.
Yeah, no, they're employees. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the vote or change of parent representatives to Kathy to represent primary through 6th grade and Jared to represent 7th through 12th grade.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, AJ.
Okay, moving on, we have the SRO agreement with City of Ocoee. It is not increasing this year. By next year, it is increasing by 5%. So the thing that Ocoee always has us do is they always have us sign a 2-year agreement. And so with this agreement, we are expecting an increase And I believe it was 5%. I want to go back in and make double. And everything else has stayed the same as I was told. I haven't gone line by line, but this is what I was told. Yeah, 5%.
This is not really a negotiable one, correct? I mean, this is a required change for us to maintain our SRO on campus by the city.
Correct.
I mean, what other options do we have to pull from some sort of outside agency to provide an SRO?
Or to go with a guardian.
Right.
Nope,
Nope.
not interested in that. No, I think Ocoee's done a fantastic job. We've had
Yeah,
great
they really
resources
have.
for them for the last, 4+ years. Be thrilled to have the opportunity to continue doing business with them, so.
Cost of living, full of raise.
I agree.
The only thing, I don't know if it's intentional, like it looks like the second and third paragraph are like the same. To copy twice. when I
Oh,
was
you're
reading it.
right. Good catch, Marissa. I'll send that back to him. I don't know why I've looked at this 3 times, but I never saw that.
There's also a section on page. Somewhere deep in the document that talks about when we extend our term. It says we're going to get together and renegotiate it starting in January 2023. I think they just need to update that. for
Okay.
The end of it.
Where is it? What page is that?
Subparagraph H on page 7.
Yeah, so if it goes through 2025, I assume that should stay in January 2025.
Is this for 2 campuses or what's?
That's how they're giving you confidence that it really is mostly the same. They're like, even the things we should have changed, we left the same.
Yeah.
And Kevin's question was making sure that this would, this is the cost per SRO, because we will have 2 SROs. One for this campus and one for high school.
And we'll sign the same contract twice.
Right. So what they are looking for is for us to, what I told them, because now it has to go back to their board as well. But what I told them is that I would give them the yay or nay from the board tonight. Then I will also provide them the updates that you just provided me. And then they'll send us back a revised copy. Marissa, you said the repeated paragraph, there was something else I thought you said.
Oh, no, that was it.
Okay. It was, you said the
second and third paragraph are the same.
Yeah. Okay. So it's page 7. Okay. Okay. Any questions before we have a vote?
Have a motion?
I'll motion to approve the school resource officer contracts for both IMO and IMHS as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion
Poor
carried.
Kevin is jumping at the bit to be the first to
No, I
say.
like second.
So I was going to skip the budget presentation and vote, since that will be Philip's show, but I did want to talk about, unless Philip, do you want to handle the bond investment language as well, or do you want me to take that?
I'll let you take that one. I think you've been a little closer to the details on it.
Okay, so as we reported the last time, we've met with Winters Agency that we've decided to use them per what you guys asked for the investment, but now we need the specific language that I provided on my notes for per Melissa Arnold, that this is the language that we would need to have you guys vote on, which is basically that so this is going to be handled very similar to what we had with the bonds. And the best way that I can explain it is that we will be sending out a proposal. Winters Agency will be sending out a proposal in which investors that are specific investors for these specific types of, what do you call them, fund vehicles, that they only can invest in these kind of vehicles. And so what they will do is they will put that out for the bidding process. They're expected to do that on Thursday. And then they would, with the Winters Agency, Chris Winters would reach out to us around, we'll probably get an email before then. And we will then get on a call with Melissa, our legal counsel, as well as Richard, who was our who was our financial advisor for the bonds, and Philip. And then Dave, if Philip can't be there, we're asking you to use the language that Stacy could be there. And then they would be on the phone, and then either Philip will make the decision, yay or nay, we're going with whatever bid that we get, or no, we won't go with whatever bid we'll get, but or Stacy would. And so what it says is just provide the authority to the Innovation Montessori treasurer, or if unavailable, the Innovation Montessori president, with input from Innovation Montessori's registered municipal advisor, which will be Chris Winters, to select the bid response that provides the highest return, complies with Innovation Montessori's loan requirements for investing the reserve funds, and substantially meets all other bid requirements. And if none of the bid responses meet those requirements, we'll have to reject all bid responses. Any questions?
And the focus is to hopefully earn that higher rate than what we're currently earning. That's like the purpose.
To add a little more, and I think we touched on this in one of our last meetings too, right? So it moves the dollars from where they are with getting minimal return and brings them into a pool where the bid that they'll be giving us is, we'll pay you this much money for your 1.9 million, right? We'll pay you this rate we're looking for 9 years, which would be towards that. And this is where we're also looking to Richard and Melissa to help us with making sure that we're meeting all of the requirements of the bond. We have access to those funds, but realistically, if things go well with or even if things go mediocre with our organization, those funds will just sit in this account for almost 30 years. So being able to get money back on a set amount is very helpful. With where rates are now, there's not a whole lot of upside potential. We do get capped out. There's exceptions that if you're talking to someone who's really marketing it, they can go, well, you can make a higher rate of return if you invest in tax exempt, right? There's all of these like, well, you could, but it's limited. So realistically, we're capped out at about what we pay on our bond. And with where market rates are now, when Patrice and I were talking about it, I'm like, there's not a whole lot of upside potential for things to just turn around and us to be able to even make more money. There's a lot more likelihood that those rates are going to come down, and we would kick ourselves for not having locked in, say, a 4% rate when now we're getting 2% on our money. And then additionally, I'm like, we are a school. We're not a financial investment institution. So while nothing we're doing would turn around and say, oh, we made $400,000 on our reserve fund, we also aren't going to be on the other side of that coming around to have to be a school that's saying, wait, we lost $400,000 on our reserve fund, and how are we going to handle this? I'm like, I'd much rather miss out on those gains than have something go on the loss side of it. So with this, like Patrice laid out, that's the legal framework. So with where it's laid out on Thursday, with your guys' vote for approval, we would be able to go in and say, yes, we'll take the whatever rate is coming in now.
4.5.
We're going for
5.5, 5.5.
5.5, yeah.
Yes, that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna cross our fingers. It'll just be a
Yes.
fluke day, and it's a great day. It's the flip side of what we were doing a few years ago, where we were wanting,
Yes.
I guess it was just last year.
We're trying to get the lower number,
Right,
right?
Lower,
the
yes.
lower
Lower.
rate. So they were like, no, now we want it high. We want it high.
No.
So that's a little context for you all.
Mhm.
Just two quick questions. What would be what would these reserve funds be used for if they had to be used? And then if someone is then going to, bid and pay us a rate and they make the spread or whatever, what is the liquidity of those, funds if they were needed for that question number one intended use case, I guess.
So, and I can answer this, Patrice, unless you're
Yeah,
just.
go ahead, go for it.
So the reserve funds are there in case we have a shortfall and our dollars put up to make a bond payment. And we make bond payments, they go out twice a year. And so these reserve funds are on hand. They're equal to one full bond payment. Now, we actually make contributions on a monthly basis to our payment, which then goes out twice a year. As part of the program of our bond aspect, these dollars are on reserve. The second question of what's the liquidity of these based on this program that one of the benefits of it, that why it fits our needs so well, is they are 100% liquid at face value. So if we were to go out and buy bonds on the market, when the rate changes, the market rate changes, the value of our bond would go up or down based on that rate. What's good about this program is we're essentially selling that risk to a financial institution who is interested in our money today and will guarantee us the rate that they're getting at the market rate. So it keeps it both liquid and at a locked-in rate. Included with that, with the parameters of what we're selling to, is the financial institution's credit rating and their their financial feasibility. Is a requirement that goes into there, as well as wording that if they slip below that rating, then they have a limited time frame to sell this asset to someone else, or I think it's return it to us. So that's what meets both our what the reserve funds are for and how we would end up how they would be used if needed. And sorry, why we would have access to them if we needed them.
They're not limited to capital funds, are they? Like, so we don't have to spend them purely on building?
Most of our dollars are the reserve fund for payment of the bond proceeds. I think about 100,000 of it is connected with our capital fund, which that one will draw down and pay out in the next, when it's used in the not too distant future. I think it's 1 to 2 years. We have about a year and a half left on that, right?
And then the interest earned off the reserve funds, what are the parameters to where we can use the interest earned?
So the way the interest earned works is it actually goes into it kind of goes towards the payment pool. And then inside of that overall bundle, what they look at is here's how much you have in your reserve fund. I guess that actually pays into the reserve fund. And then they'll look at what's in the reserve fund, and I don't know if it's every 6 months at a reoccurring intervals, they'll pass any excess over to our payment account. So effectively what it does is then reduces the amount we have to pay in order to meet our, so you need $1.8 million on hand.
Yep.
Oh, you already have 80,000. So you need $1.72 million on hand.
Yeah,
so
and then
give us an occasional, we'll be able to put a little bit less, kind of gives us a discount every however many months that happens. So we'll be able to pay a little bit less on that reoccurring. Expectation is we'll see about 70,000 a year coming into our bottom line of our financials, that it'll be reflected, I guess, depending on what account we will, most likely it'll just be reflected in lower debt service payment going out the door.
I think Dave has actually a line item set aside, but also we did have I think, Dave, what did we get? Like 22,000 back recently also towards our debt service too, for the other funds as well that came back to us. I don't know if David's there or not, but.
He's giving a thumbs up. So
I know, okay.
Thumbs up.
Yes. So that's the language that we were told to ask to have a vote for. Do you have that language, Kristen? You want me to read it again, or how do you want me to do this?
So we're
Yeah,
making
so
a-
I copied
have it.
some information out of the report here, but I'm just trying to clarify which portion do I need to have in the vote?
We're making a motion to provide authority to the treasurer, or if unavailable, the president, with input from the registered municipal advisor to select the bid response that provides the highest return and complies with the loans requirement for investing the reserve funds and substantially meets all other bid requirements. If none of the bid responses meet these requirements, we will reject all bid responses. So that will be the motion in totality.
Yep, got it. That's exactly what I have.
Well stated. You wrote that down real quick, Kristen.
Yeah, hopefully she copied and pasted.
I
it.
copied and pasted, so
Yeah.
who's motioning?
Brett is motioning.
Brett,
Sure.
I think. Yeah.
How much are we paying for the people who are putting this out to bid and advising us on it? I mean, Winters and I guess Richard, are we compensating them?
Not Richard, but Winters. We are compensating.
A little lot.
Do you remember, Dave, what that was?
I want to say it's 250 basis points, so 1/4%.
Yeah, I think
Is
so.
what they'll get on it for as a one-time,
For one time.
yeah, as part of the
25 or 250 basis points?
250 basis points.
It's 2.5.
That's
Sorry,
25%
per million.
25.
25.
Wrong. Quarter of a percent. I remember what
Okay.
I saw, but I
It's
changed
about $4,000, is that right? Am I in the right order of magnitude?
How much did you say, Kevin?
4,000? I mean, I'm not good with decimal points, so it's 400.
How much are they putting out to bid?
Putting out 2 million to bid. So
Yeah, it's about, well, I did 1.9, so 4750, so 49 or so.
let me see.
It's 5,000.
I just wonder, I mean, the qualified investments we're allowed to invest in here are like treasuries and AAA money markets. There's not going to be a lot of variability amongst the proposals. The decision that's made that actually makes a difference to us is what kind of durations we want to choose, you know, if it's, and that's where the municipal advisor really shows their value, right? You know, if they think that it's going to be a rising rate environment, they might say that we should sit in a shorter duration or a longer duration. But when you're talking about the debt service reserve, your average duration of these investments is less than a year anyway. So I really think you're talking about a few bucks either way on what we're choosing. I mean, we're not locking something in for decades here. We're gonna have short maturities and these will be revolving, I would think. But it doesn't sound like, I mean, $4,000 is affordable for the service we're getting. So I'm fine with it. I just think that you can also call around and get quotes, but
This one actually, so
it's probably worth
this
doing.
one would be for the length of 9 years. So we wouldn't be having this conversation on a regular basis because it is what the benefit is that it keeps the liquidity at face value. Whereas if we moved for most of the other investment vehicles we looked at was purchasing into a spread of bond programs, but those would have a fluctuating basis, right? So we're trying to keep our face value there while also the liquidity comes in because we're buying short-term assets. Which even having this conversation and saying things that I somewhat understand, but I'm certainly not fluent and conversant in, is also a benefit of the 9-year program we were looking at, is because it allows for the school administration and the school board to not need to be constantly revisiting this and trying to reevaluate, is this the right decision? Are we in this right spot? Much like getting our bond that we got was a kind of a cool adventure for a lot of us. And it was kind of exciting, but it's definitely not something that it was a big distraction from our normal order of business of running a school. So that I'm trying to find, I thought I had it right at my fingertips and I found his document, but I don't see the actual amount in there. So it's $13,000 is what it would end up being. Technically it's paid by the bidder to Winters. So officially we're not paying it, but I always kind of, being the accountant that I am, I know that it still factors into the cost of what they're paying. So in some ways it's going to drive down what they give us a little bit. So it'll be about $14,000 total is what the estimated is.
And my understanding too, just so everyone knows on the call, is that, not on the call, but on the Zoom, is that there will be like a 2-week period, kind of like closing a house, where there will be a lot of paperwork going back and forth between our legal counsel and their legal counsel to finalize it.
These are simple transactions. It's not nearly so complex as
They made it out to be. They said
Well, they're
it
trying to
takes
make it
a
sound
couple
like they're,
weeks.
they're trying to make it sound like they're 14,000 as well as money.
Kidding.
Right, maybe that's why.
Yeah,
they're-
but that's for finding the good deals for us, right? I mean, that's for getting all the work done to get
Yeah.
it, to get the best numbers we can.
I mean, we're not paying for it, so. And they have to get us the highest rate, so it's not like they can,
Right. And if it doesn't
know.
come in, then we don't do it, but
not like they can give us the dome by giving it to their guy, so.
So I got a motion from Brett and I captured all that. Who's seconding?
I'll say
Me-
it. Kevin, right? Go ahead.
I got you, AJ.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Perfect. All right, motion carries.
So then the last thing, really, we don't have to really get into, I did want to just present to you, and not to confuse the language, because we've now talked about parent representatives. And we are also talking, we also remember that we, in response to the requirements for the parent rights bill, we had to put together a grievance process for the parent rights bill for Plains, which is separate for what I've given you as the parent grievance procedure. And this, Kristen, was just to codify what you and I were talking about. Like, I know that was somewhere, and where did it end up? And we had this process in place that we were doing this. And so in one of the times that we were talking to the Arnold Law Firm, they mentioned that they had a parent grievance procedure for us. And they go through the informal grievance, they go through the formal grievance. I don't feel a need that we have to go into it too much right now tonight, but I wanted to give you plenty of time. I suggest that we put it on for, July, unless somebody feels like it's a no-brainer and we want to pass it now. It's really up to you guys.
I'm fine to sit on it and review it. I think, my concerns would just be, or questions would be, kind of think when we talked about this last time was, now that we're putting dates or like timeframes, 2 days, 5 days, 15 days, kind of SLAs on these things, that we have an ability to actually track and manage those
Yeah.
and understand if we don't meet those, what are the consequences to that, just so that we understand what we're signing up for.
Absolutely.
And who gets them and what roles are responsible for them as well.
Nope. So Heather, and I'll be working with Heather for her agenda in July too. So we will pass this on into July.
That's good.
Okay, next up, Philip, I pass it to you for the finance, for the budget for this year.
All right, we'll see how I do. So overall, one, for the board members, did you guys get if you look in your emails, you should have, Dave sent the final numbers just almost minutes before the meeting. So you should have those in there. If you open up the one that has combined in the name, that's the one that I'll be talking through for the most part. So with this total revenue projections for next year, total revenue projections is that.
You gonna share your
portion-
screen, Philip, or are we just following along?
I can share my screen if you guys are okay with it. Might be easier.
Fine.
That would be, yeah.
Give me a second. Actually, I'll do. No. All right, did it come up?
Yeah, let me see it.
Okay. So what we're looking at here, this is 2 years ago, actual numbers, 21, 22. This is budget numbers from last year, or the year that we're wrapping up. And then this is budget numbers from this year. So total revenue we're looking at for this next year would be $11.3 million. And this is for CASA, IMO, IMHS, so the whole organization. Total, the total funds available includes basically our retained earnings or our fund balance, as we call it. So I don't put too much in that one. Operating expenses, particularly when I look at this, I look at our numbers from 2 years ago to where we are now for the growth. The budgeted numbers from last year had some shortfalls. We've had things come in more expensive than budgeted and revenue come in under where we were hoping it would. So you can see our numbers running down through here, getting us to this bottom number, 11.1 million total operating expense. So we start with the 11.3 million in revenue based on what, and this really, all this work has been happened by Dave, Patrice, Kathy, and Jared. And I know leaning on some of their staff for figuring out what gets balanced where, what's going where, how many students will they have in their areas, how those things are going together. And so total operating expense of 11.1 million, giving us a current year surplus of $200,000. One of the pieces that comes in on this that is relevant is our cash flow reserve that we're required to have for our bond requirements, and that is supposed to be going up next year. So this is one of the things that the team did this week, is to go back and squeeze a few more dollars out of this in order to set us up for a little bit better cash flow. As you guys also know, one of our challenges this year that's been a big point of strain is because we're spending the dollars to then be able to get reimbursements from grants. We spend that money, send it out to get reimbursed, but then we're now short on cash flow because the dollars are waiting for reimbursement. So that's an ongoing headache. So that was another area of saying, hey, let's give ourselves a little bit more wiggle room so we haven't committed all of our funds and we've got a little bit more of that money to try to move some of those grant dollars through. And with the feedback that I've gotten and with what I see here, I recommend it for approval. I will say, I encourage you guys to ask more detailed questions and get into it. I think Patrice, Kathy, and Jared will need to be the ones who answer them, since the details are really in their realm.
So what % are we keeping for cash flow for next year? Is that the 16 year?
This this would be our this is that ratio that we usually look at. The 200,000. Let's see if I actually was to take. This would be that what do we call that number? It always slips my mind. Do you remember, Patrice?
The fund balance, you mean?
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's the fund balance reserve, right? That's the number that we talk about.
And what's the required? Is it 15?
3.
So the fund
Oh,
balance
3.
is different. Yeah, the fund balance. So the requirements we have for cash on hand next year with the bonds is moving up from this year was 30 days. Next year it's 45 days. And Dave, you're on, make sure you correct me if I'm wrong. The fund balance is, again, that world that we like to live in when we don't have a bond, because the fund balance is something that is a requirement at the state level that you have to have a 3% fund balance. We've always operated well over, a 3% fund balance. In the board has the requirements to have at least a 5% fund balance. We now have, outside of the fund balance, we have these other requirements with the bond that we have to manage, which is the cash on hand and the debt ratio.
Yeah, realistically, our bond requirements are going to be more stringent than the state requirements. So they're the ones that come in. And there's a little bit from an accounting side. So bond requirements are 1.1 ratio of our debt service to current operating costs, I believe is the right one. So there's an aspect of dollars spent on the on the business, the building side of things. So depreciation expense, those can come in to offset. So it gets into some of the technical background accounting calculations for viability of it. And I do believe that Dave had crunched those numbers as well for validation of it. I don't have the formula handy to have done that calculation myself.
We're still waiting on payment from Orange County on some of the ESSER grant funds, correct? Would they step,
Correct.
have they come, we have not received their entire payments, right? Yeah.
No, and you know, listen, we send in payments for 30,000 on this, on 15,000, on 10,000 on this item. And so, you know, Dave has a large amount of ones that he's always sending in reimbursement for, and then which ones end up straggling in. So we have been so involved with this part of the budget. One of the things that we have gotten accustomed to is going and getting an update from him, you know, with where we are at. I know Dave is listening. I don't know if he knows right now how far behind any of the specific ones are right now, but we've been pretty good about catching up, because at one point in time, they were almost 9 months behind, actually almost closer to a year. So we've been catching up. I don't know if we're 4 months out, 5 months out, I'm not sure. So Dave, if you're online, you can speak. There he is. Go for it, Dave.
Okay, sorry, trying to find unmute. Currently, Stacey, the oldest stuff is about 120 days. And then obviously then we've got stuff at 90, stuff at 60, and then stuff at 30. It's, yeah, the 9 months is now gone, but 120 days is the maximum. It's still too much.
Still too much. Have you, Patrice, have you reached out to any of the other charters? Have you, like when you have the charter school meetings, is this came up as like an issue that they're having as well with Orange County? Like, is that discussion had on what action we could possibly take? Because this is a hurdle.
Right. It's unfortunately, there are two sides of the coin. There is the side of the coin when you go to these charter school finance meetings that Dave and I've gone a couple of times. We end up being the ones that are
the most knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, Margaret even will say that, like, oh my gosh, you guys are always on point, always getting your information.
Yeah.
Fortunately, there's a lot of schools not accessing the money, and mostly because it is a lot of hurdles to jump through. Outside of that, as far as the delays with Orange County, I can't really say I've reached out to other people to say, hey, how far are you delayed? But I know from what they have actually just told us, the school choice staff have told us, is that they, up until I think even last month, they were still trying to close out ESSER 2 with some schools that had not even accessed ESSER 3 yet. So I know, and Dave, again, correct me if I'm wrong, they had made the comment that they were trying to get all the ESSER 2s in, while we are, you know, ESSER 3 has been around now for over a year. So we've been well invested in ESSER 3. We've used up our ESSER 2. He's giving me the thumbs up again. Thank you, Dave. We've used up our ESSER 2. And so anyway, so it just shows me that, yes, they're still back. I think that they are backlogged because although the federal guidelines gave them the opportunity to hire more staff to help them with the processing, for some reason, Orange County did not hire a lot of extra staff. I don't understand it. I don't know why they didn't, but they didn't. They, when I say that, they've hired 1 or 2 extra, but that's a large district.
A lot of processing, yeah.
A lot of schools. But I will say this, one thing that I feel good about, and Philip knows this, Dave knows this, everyone, you guys know this, is I feel great about our accountability. Because one thing I've always said from the get-go, I know that with these federal funds, you could wait for it in a year or 2, there's going to be auditing done, and I feel great about the shape that we're in. We're going to be in a good place for any audits that come our way.
The instructional staff training has decreased quite a bit from what was actually used, right, in 21-22.
So that was the first year.
60,000.
Yep, that was the first year that we started the adolescent training. And so
Mhm.
that was our biggest cohort that we used for that money. That's also been very helpful with the grant. Obviously, that money is dwindling down to how much money we're going to have available. In the long run, that will be a conversation, that we'll have to be, talking about.
Yeah.
Because we are covering a lot of that money through the grant right now.
Well, and hopefully we can just focus more in-house. Okay.
Was
Where's
there
the,
anything that was a big, I was just gonna say, kind of ask a general question, was there anything of concern as you went through the process that was really sticky to figure out, or pretty much flowed smoothly? You didn't run into a lot of questions, or?
No, we definitely did. We had to, have some tough conversations about, areas that we could really reduce. We are very being mindful that we listen. We all know throughout the country, everyone has been on notice about what's happened in education through, after COVID. Outside of teacher shortages, but also learning loss is obviously a big concern. So this money has been used to address that learning loss. And so we're very mindful that we need to figure out ways to support our instruction while that money is disappearing for how we've used it, whether or not that's the tutoring, all the lovely camps we can have this summer, all of that's been supported from this federal funds. I'm a little bit hopeful that because I can't imagine if we're just one school, how some of the other larger districts are going to be faced with the reality at the end of next year when this money is totally gone.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful that maybe there'll be another infusion. I don't want to scare anybody, but I think there might be. I'm hoping.
And just curious if there's anything that relates to, things that we need to consider for fundraising purposes, areas that we really need some extra lift.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we are, as we always say, Brett and I used to laugh about this all the time. We are still looking for the person who wants to plop $5 million into our lab. So anybody can come up with that, that'd be great. No, in all seriousness, I think fundraising, I think if we could get back to a place where we could count on $25,000 to $35,000 coming from other sources, like we are going to be building back Pizza Friday again, because we know that has been a great opportunity. I know Marissa and we've had some great conversations after the fundraising committee. We want to make sure we're spreading out the opportunities for fundraising across all the schools. Not just one school. And so I do still always think that there's a lot of great opportunities. I know I still would like to see money for trees, money for shade, money for bleachers, so there's always room for. I'm looking at Kevin, who's sitting here. I think he's taking out his checkbook right now.
Any big cuts? I mean, I see some big cuts on here, but anything that we are taking out of the budget to make it work besides food services?
No, I mean, just, normal, just looking through all the different, we have spent a lot of 2 days. Heather, it was great to have Heather join us, and she got a chance to spend 2 days with us, just digging in line by line, looking for 5,000 here, 10,000 here, 40,000 here, all the opportunities that we can figure out how to save that coin.
I think I may have cut somebody off before. Was that you, AJ? Did you have something?
it's just on the total revenue, is that just the increase? What is the increase from the previous year? Is that just the cost of living that they give us per pupil, or higher enrollment numbers? Or
There's 3 things that are involved with that right now. It's higher enrollment numbers. it also, you know, because I think we don't max out until next year. Dave, you can give me a thumbs up. I don't know if it's next year we max out. But we also did get an increase of 4.1% for Orange County this year. We also were told by Richard, there was the statute number escapes me right now, but there is a statute that has to do with capital outlay for charter schools specifically, that is mandates districts to set aside more money for charter schools, which means the districts are gonna really love us now, because I don't think it was a case of the state necessarily funding more. And may not be accurate. I don't know for sure. I've heard a lot of different tales about this particular legislation, but districts are being mandated to share more of the pie for capital
Their
outlay.
surplus, I think is what Richard was saying, right? Patrice,
Is
like
it?
whatever their surplus is, then has to be shared amongst the charters in that district.
And there's a way in which it's going to be capped. And then, so this year we're going to, I think, Dave, if I'm correct, I believe we're receiving, it was at $149 more per student. Oh, look at that. I get all these thumbs up from Dave. Thank you. So that was also part of the revenue, AJ. So those were the three areas. 4.1% for Orange County in general student revenue, the actual enrollment numbers going up this year, and then the additional capital outlay.
So the only one that would have any potential be an issue is the surplus item, because it might flow with the more. You know what I mean? It's a law. It's saying something new, right? Like, so,
Right.
and I'm assuming that's not, from what you're saying, that's not a very big portion of that $370,000 increase from the previous year.
No, well, you figure it's $149, you know, per student this year compared to what, and can't remember. I would be,
Gonna
if I
still
name
be-
something right now, I'd have it wrong. So
It's gonna be in the 100 to 125,000 range, given our student count. So it is still a notable amount that's in there. So you're asking the right question, AJ, to say, hey, where is this coming? It was one of those additional factors when I saw the first draft of this that I was like, we need more buffer in there because we need some breathing room. Student count, because we do still have some growth, is an area that has long been a headache for us. You know, do we get to where that is? Next year, our growth isn't, I don't have the student numbers in front of me, but I know from where we were last year and where we're going to, those growth numbers will be really occurring more in that primary level. We'll have high school growing a little bit, but it won't be at the rate that it grew this year or last year. So it should be easier to stay closer to those projected numbers. I mentioned that one because student count was one of the challenges. So that revenue this year was lower than budgeted as a result of us keeping those student counts lower. We didn't bring in as many students when some of them left, and we didn't push to get to those budgeted numbers quite as hard. We wanted to allow our school to stabilize a little bit and recover from COVID. So with that, I would say I grimaced. I was like, "Ooh, new revenue, always excited about it, but how much can I trust it in my budget?" And so I don't want to rely on it and then not get it. So we've got some balance in there, but those are some factors for some of the ways that I thought through this when I was saying, hey, how am I comfortable with this large of a growth and how realistic is it?
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other budget discussion? Any other questions?
I just had one question, sorry, you may have covered this, I had to step away for a second. The facilities acquisition cost there, is that the portables for next year?
yes, that's the leasing. We're still, you know, the intent is still to cover a lot of the actual setup costs with the project fund from the construction.
Okay. And then I think in terms of the surplus, the projected surplus 201, like, is there a target that we want to be at? Is 201 just an amount we would put into contingency to cover any, variances we have throughout the year, or would we
I
want
missed
to
the first
plan
part. Talk to me about the 201.
the 201 surplus that's projected down at the
Oh,
bottom,
gotcha.
the 201,000?
Right.
Is that, I mean, I don't know if there's we've kind of varied that around year to year. Right? This year, we're obviously higher than that by quite a bit, but are we holding that for any potential variances as contingency, or should we be allocating that somewhere else to get closer to, just a net zero surplus?
No, I think we need to hold it at the 200, for just exactly that contingency, as well as we go forward with being able to manage next year to have the 45 days cash on hand. I think we're going to have to, our fund balance is going to have to be, higher as we're managing. And Dave, this is the first time this month is the first time we're going through that audit process for the cash on hand as far as the debt ratio. I don't know, Brett, am I answering your question the right way?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, that was what my assumption was, is this would be contingency for any, unplanned variances that we have. But if it also helps us manage cash on hand, then
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
how I would,
increasing as well, like in the following year? Are we going over 45 days at some point?
No.
Or is that when we max, is that where we max out?
We max out at 45
Okay.
days. I know that they had wanted us to go up to, 75, and I'm like, oh, you gotta be crazy.
Other questions? Are we moving to a vote?
Do I have a motion for approving the current budget?
all motion.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the budget so carries as written.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
That's
guys
for
for all your
me.
work on that.
All right, thank you for that detailed review. And if we have PTO Owls, I see you there, Sarah. If you'd like to give us an update, you're up.
Feel like we just need to text her when we're like 2 minutes,
Hey,
5 minutes
guys.
away. Like, all right, Sarah,
Can you hear
we'll
me?
come back now. We're 5 minutes away.
Okay, awesome. I just had to take myself off of mute. All right, so PTO update. We are doing a community closet free shopping day. That's going to be on July 22nd from 11 to 2 in the NPR. So it's going to be perfect for all of our new students so they can come, or anybody else in need. We have a lot of uniforms that were donated. So also, if anyone wants to come help us sort and set up before that event, that would be lovely. We are making next year PTO calendar. So our goal is to have, like, you come to meet the teacher night, and we're going to give you a one sheet. It's going to have everything that the PTO is doing for the 23-24 school year. So the goal is to have, we worked really hard with Kathy and Eileen, and all the APs. So thank you, Nicole. So we got all of our schedule done. We're working with high school to solidify those dates, and then working like spirit nights in around all those things. So when people come back to school, it can be very organized and ready to go. They can just put that on their fridge, and then they can plan about what events they want to attend next year. With that being said, we are looking to have some people help us host the events next year. So typically it's like maybe a couple of us doing the work. So if anybody else is interested in being the lead for an event, like a movie night, if they want to, oh, I'll do the lead, or people are looking to get their volunteer hours, our goal is to help empower some more volunteers and get them involved this year. And then in the meantime, if anyone has a little extra space in their garage, we could use that. We have purchased some very wonderful but large carnival games that are currently residing on campus. I'm sorry, they're still there. And we need to move them off of campus. We're talking about maybe getting a shed, but there's some logistical things with that. So in the meantime, if anyone has some garage space they would like to donate for the summer, we would love that because our storage unit can't hold this one big balloon pop game. So feel free to reach out. But anyway, we are rocking and rolling this summer, kind of in low gear for the PTO, but we will step it back up and see you guys at Meet the Teacher.
Thank you, Sarah.
Awesome.
Sounds good. Thank you. Clear your garages.
I know.
Okay, we have committee update time, but I propose maybe we hold because we have a couple of those on the list for tomorrow's working session. I know we're going to have communication topic and fundraising topic updates there, unless any other committee type updates that we need to cover tonight.
Doesn't sound like it.
So Stacy, any final comments tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to take this moment, which is kind of see if I can get through it, to recognize Patrice in her official last school board meeting with us, which is kind of just like I don't even know how to say that out loud. It just seems so strange to put a close on that story, but we are so appreciative of all of the work and the time and the sweat and the tears and the love and the hugs and everything that you have provided to this amazing school over the last 9 years plus. And I don't think that we could ever even share what you mean to this group of people and families and teachers and students. As Lincoln said, you're not replaceable, Miss Patrice, right? So we're just so glad to have had our amazing time with you, and you have mentored amazing group of leaders here, and I think that they have really grown, especially over the last year, because you have forced it. And I think that push for our current APs and our current principals, you loaded them down, and because of that guidance, they have grown so much this year. So we're just really appreciative of you doing that and you taking that risk and that support and that leadership and that mentorship with them. We're just so grateful, and we look forward to enjoying some out of the school events and bonding with you now as that comes on. And we're excited to have Heather join us and be a part of that new leadership part, and so appreciative of your guidance and work with her even over this week and the coming weeks. So I think that, that is just going to help us to really have such a smooth transition, and we're just truly grateful for you, Patrice.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I got, you guys know how I feel about this community. It's definitely been the thrill of my life. And I count myself very lucky, very fortunate to end my long career in education in this community. I love you guys so much, and I love our community so much, and I'm looking forward to coming back. And I keep joking with IMO that I'm coming back to do Carline. So, at some point in time, I'm going to come back and do Carline. But thank you so much. I didn't really prepare anything to say. I'm kind of surprised, but yeah, it is. It is weird that it's my last board meeting. Just no words. I love you guys very much. It's just been the privilege of my life that I will hold and cherish for the rest of my life.
Absolutely.
And thank you to this board. This board has been incredibly supportive and been just huge in the success of our story, and I also just mirror the same thing about the staff. The staff has just been absolutely incredible. We would not be here without, you know, the principals, the assistant principals, the teachers, custodians, everybody. So it's wonderful to have a community that feels, they feel emotional about leaving, you know, so it's a great feeling. So thank you.
You will be with us tomorrow night, right?
Yes.
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 I'm answering for her on that one.
Yes, I am.
Ain't getting out yet.
Yeah, no, just the official last one of these, so.
Got it.
Yeah, and we look forward to looking to see all of your adventures on your some fun vacation time
That's
you
right.
have planned ahead, hopefully. So absolutely. Well, I hope everybody has a wonderful evening. We will see the board tomorrow night and enjoy some Ellie Lou's. Thank you, Kristen, for ordering that for us, and I get to work on some of these processes and goal setting for our new school year. So have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye, everyone.
Bye.